Good everyone. I hope you're having an amazing day. So today I'm gonna talk about another tips and gotchas around Aura component development. As usual, I'm not gonna show this in a form of slide. I can teach you guys from a trailer, right? So why copying, pasting the content to a different page, right? Okay. So today we're gonna talk about inheritance and composition. So I hope you guys know what inheritance is. I mean, okay, if you don't know, anyway, don't worry. I'll talk about it. And composition, right? So let me start with the composition, right? It's pretty simple. Like it's like taking in simple terms. I'm talking in terms of a layman, right? So you take you have an object, you have another object. You take and you combine it together to form a more complex object to get your result, right? So it's like combining two different things to form another thing, to do a greater thing. You know, it's like you're combining one force with another force to become a greater force, right? Something similar line. I mean, that's why I said it's just a layman terms, right? So, it's combining, aspect of one component to another component to form a third, to form a complex object uh, form so that you can perform more complex operation. Inheritance is pretty simple, like you're inheriting something, right? You have a parent component, you're inheriting a child component out of it. That's pretty much it. Like, I talked about when I was covering Apex, right? Inheritance, like, if you talk in terms of a layman term, right? Like you have a property, right? And your child will inherit that property, right? Ideally, that's a scenario in most part of the world that, unless someone wants to give to a charity, that's a different things. But in general scenario, a child inherit most of uh, you know, the properties, or other qualities like child inherit, if a son inherits the property of a father, like maybe a look or maybe a behavior aspect of it, or a skill. Let's say father might be a skill for, skilled painter, or a designer. A child might have inherited that skills, or a father might be a singer. A child might have inherited that quality. So it's similar concept, right? If you look at the aura side of things, right, you have a child, you have a parent component, say with the properties and with an action, right, and you write a child component and you inherit it, right? So inheritance is a bit strange when it comes to aura side of things, right? It's not like an Apex or a C sharp or other language you're used to it. It's a bit confusing. It's not really great. So normally, recommendation from a Salesforce side is to prefer composition over inheritance, as you can see. The reason being, right? Say for instance, okay, um, you have a parent control component, okay, and parent component have a, say, a handler or a function, say, do this, okay, just an example, and you inherit a child component from the parent component, right? Now, you obviously, if you are, say, a C# developer, Apex developer, you will say, okay, I can use the, do something method from the parent component inside the child component. Yeah, that's right. You can do that. But the problem here, when it comes to Aura, right, you can't extend it, right? Let's say, you have a do something method in a parent component, right, or a you can say, or a function, right, in a parent component, which says do something, which actually say, uh, which prints out, say, I'm doing something, right? Now, if you wanted to use this method or function, right, inside the child component, you can do that, no problem, right? It will print out I'm doing something. But if you wanted to, say, extend it, right, extend the parent, uh, you know, handler or function, do something to do, along with printing I'm doing something plus something else, you can't do that. You have to use your own separate child method which does something, but you can't extend the parent handler or function. It's not supported. So that's why they say it's quirky, right? It's not really efficient, right? Also, this Salesforce says that, as you can see, inheritance consumes more memory and process resource than you might expect. Okay, so in that perspective, so they're pretty much telling you, right? Hey, don't use inheritance. You may use inheritance, but if you wanted to get into the complex aspect of, Aura, then please do not use inheritance. Stay away from it. It's not a great choice, right? So that's pretty much what Salesforce was saying. Instead, use composition, right? Which is pretty cool. Now, there's something I do understand that I didn't cover Apex Controller because uh, instead I said okay, use LDS, which is pretty efficient when you wanted to do CRUD operation, which is true, but that does not mean that you can't use Apex Controller. You might come across a system, right, which has been built, say, a couple of years ago. But they might be extensively using Apex controllers with Aura component. Now, Apex controller, it's like a server controller, right? It's normally used for transferring data, between the server and your client. Okay, so that's where the Apex controller comes in the picture. So if you wanted to use an Apex controller, you have to annotate with Aura enabled, otherwise it will not work. Okay, so that's one of the, and it's a server side method, right? And one thing you have to understand that, right? Server side controller method, right, being a static, as you can see, you can't store any component state on the server side. That's one of the things. Okay, so if you wanted to do that, you have to do that on the client side attribute. Okay, so that's one of the thing uh, you have to understand, right? So this is one of the thing, and one of the thing, right? And Aura, with any Aura component, right, that has server side, you pass the data back and forth between the Aura component and JavaScript code and server side. Uh, so there won't be any issues in general, right, between the two data format, which automatically works. So yeah, you have to understand that Apex is not JavaScript. It has its own way of doing things, right? So you have to pay attention to that. But this is the main important thing I wanted to cover that, if you are someone who wanted to use, inheritance, stop right there and just ask yourself one question. Is it really worth it? And why do you have to use inheritance? Can I use composition instead, right? So yeah, that's pretty much I wanted to talk about it. And this is a very short lecture. That being said, though, I got a lot of stuff to cover, right? We got large data volume, we got other aspects to cover as well in PD2, and I'm doing it slowly so that you guys can take your own time, prepare it. There's no point in hurrying up and just going and taking the exam and failing the exam, right? You have to take your own time, enjoy the learning experience, and learn it right properly. So that's the reason why I'm doing small, right? Instead of doing 2 hours long session, it's not productive, to be honest, right? And so I'm hoping to complete this, maybe around end of November, because I'm pretty much covering 4 to 5 days a week, right? The topic. So I can say around end of November I'll be done. So we might end up having like 50 to 60 small episode, maybe 70 small episode. Right now already done, I think, around close to 30, right? And but we've barely done like 30 to 40% of it still, right? So that's pretty much I wanted to talk about, guys, and I hope you enjoyed it. And if you have more questions, you can always reach out to me. You can always put your amazing lovely comments like you always do. Thank you for that. I appreciate it, right? So yeah, that being said, you have a great evening. So since, as you can see, it's 6 o'clock in New Zealand, so if it's a morning, good morning, right? So adios.